Hello, good morning, welcome back to my channel. Come on, Socks. It's snowing a bit. Actually, it's stopped and it looks like it's melting, but it snowed through the night. And Socks had to keep waking up and telling me that he'd been outside and his paws were cold and he was covered in snow. So he was in disgrace this morning for being up all night and he got told off. And now I've told him I've forgiven him, because I've even sleepily done my morning's words. What I'm doing at the moment is setting myself a timer and writing in 15-minute sprints, which really makes me focus. I'm working on 2 projects at the same time, which I said I would never do, but actually it's working all right. And I've had a good morning of writing and editing, and I feel a bit better about having a wrecked night's sleep because of the cat and Jeremy's snoring. I hope everyone's well, and I hope January is starting off okay. It's been a bit dark here in Manchester, and I haven't been out so much because it's been so drizzly and wet. It was lovely to see the snow in the middle of the night, magical, and I kind of wanted to dash out then and play in the snow in the dark, but it didn't seem like such a good idea. Reading time. I've given myself some reading time in the afternoons, and over the weekend I read the 6th of the James Herriot books, Vet in a Spin from 1977, towards the end of the series, when he's got an outer frame to the story with him training to be a pilot during the Second World War, late in the war, and how he doesn't get to fly in the end and is sent back home. And within each chapter, we go back to a memory, different memories of being a vet. So we're kind of gathering up the untold stories, really, from his time before the war. I did some reading afterwards and learnt that a lot of the timescales are jiggled with, in that he's actually giving us anecdotes from much later, 60s, 70s, as a vet, and he's putting them back into a simpler time of the 1930s. And actually, when you look at Alf White's biography, the man who really was James Herriot, the actual author, he wasn't a vet in the 1930s in the same place, in the same way. It's very interesting that he takes his experiences of later and pops them back into an earlier, more golden period before the Second World War. There's something telling and quite sweet about that, I think. But interesting in terms of life writing, somebody changing the chronology of their own life. And really, these are novels. They're novels rather than memoir. He fictionalizes things so far. And I guess that's why they have their longevity too, because he created these people and these situations, this world, from the ground up, using bits of life, and that's what gives it its great texture, its fine graining, as Max Sebold used to say, that fiction has a fine grain to it that needs polishing up. But because it's so present on the page, it lasts, I think. We are fully inside this world. Anyway, the chapters I loved are towards the end. There's a chapter about a stray cat where he and James and Tristan save it. Its intestines are hanging out and it needs stitching and cleaning, and they bring it back from the brink just in time and bring it up in their house. And the cat is eccentric and goes out to public meetings. It goes to the WI, it goes to the pub, and it's very sociable. And eventually a farmer from the next town over comes and finds it and claims it. He's their cat, and it's heartbreaking. And there's other chapters. The old trampy bloke who works on the land, who has a dog that needs saving. That later became a TV episode in the 70s or early 80s, with Patrick Troughton playing the old man of the road. And so it's a very familiar story, but it gets told here beautifully. So there's some really fantastic chapters in the second half especially of this book, and it makes me want to go and read and reread all the others. Going through my shelves, I realised I've got nearly the whole series in these fantastic pan copies of the 70s. These are the copies we had when I was a kid, with these Thelwell drawings on the cover. They kind of made them more, I suppose, respectable looking later on. These are proper paperbacks with a promise of kind of robust and silly humour, knockabout humour in a way, with these kinds of illustrations on the front. But these are the ones I remember. Later you got snowy Dales landscapes, like I suppose Gervais Finn's books set in the same place, and also memoirs, best-selling. And they tried to repackage these in the same way. But I love these. And I remember copying the drawings when I was a kid. I think I'm missing volume 5, Vets Might Fly. It might be around somewhere. I haven't bought these in any kind of programmatic way over the years. I've just picked them up when I've seen them, thinking I was rebuying the same one at times, and maybe I did. But it was interesting just to kind of do a sweep through the shelves and realise I've got, without trying almost, the whole series. I know there were 2 later ones that we never had, I don't think, when I was a kid, and I've not read. So I must dive deeper into this and find out what I've not got and what I need to get. There were little volumes as well they did later, cat stories and dog stories, which I think are compiled from all of these. So I have reread things in that form too, and they're nice, but they're kind of gifty books. Anyway, that was my James Herriot, and I read it in about a day and a half and loved it, and it made me think about turning a great swathe of your working life into a memoir, and what that takes, how you hew it out of your life and make it understandable in its own terms, how you tell jokes against yourself, turn every story against yourself, almost as the butt of the joke of your own life, and how that works, and how you set up the kind of comedy of the characters around you, but give the reader something to root for, so they know what's at stake in each of these anecdotes. We could all write stories about the work we've done and the worlds we've lived in, but how do you make people care? And that's the great work of life writing, I suppose. Anyway, then I was straight onto a thriller. Gillian Flynn, Sharp Objects, which I think is her first. This was a gift back on my birthday from Siobhan, my friend Siobhan. Now, I'd read Gone Girl and loved it a few years ago, and I hadn't tackled the others, and I don't know why. I really loved Gone Girl, and I remember racing to the end of that. Come on, he wants to be in on the video. Come on. Come on, Socks. Come and look here. Come and see. I'd forgotten how uncomfortable that book was, though. I remember how brilliantly it was written and how the pages just fly by and keep you guessing. You're wet and cold. But also it's a very seedy, nasty world that she conjures. And she does so here too in Sharp Objects. It's a story of a young reporter who's obviously had some kind of, psychological problems. She's been away in a hospital. And she's given a new post, a new job to report on. There's been, girls going missing, little girls going missing, bodies turning up in her hometown in Missouri. And so she goes to stay with her rich family, her mother and stepfather, and half-sister, her evil half-sister. And we get enmeshed in this world where she's back in this hometown, And she's covered in scars from writing words on herself and self-harming, and she's drinking vodka, and she's flirting with the out-of-town copper who's investigating. And we meet all these terrible people from the town, and mostly they are terrible. It's a town built on pig farming, and we learn details that I wish I never heard about intensive animal farming. And it all adds to this atmosphere, this grotesque atmosphere, overheated atmosphere in this town, and the cruelty of girls to each other, especially at school, in high school. And you feel it very strongly that this is a dangerous world to be living in, although on the outside it would look like any other town. And so in this kind of book, we do slip beneath the surface of ordinary lives and realize how dangerous and dicey they are. And that's what's uncomfortable about this kind of thriller, and that's what she lets us into. I felt the same reading The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins when that came out, except then I read her second book and I thought it was just awful. Really messy, and I didn't even know what it was about. I don't think she quite knew what it was about. But the kind of thing where the first one's done so well, they really have to push the second one. And it didn't have the same feeling of, to me, of the disturbing darkness under the surface of everyday lives. That's what a domestic thriller like this does. Although there's a bit more policey stuff in this, I guess. Although I do like the thing about reporters filing copy and turning every encounter into quotes, into stories, and how she suffers for that, how she is held in great suspicion by her fellow townspeople because of her job as a reporter. So I whizzed through 2/3 of this yesterday. After my words were written for the day, I just sat and read, and I was reading in the evening as well. Whenever I could, which is always telling when I'm hooked on something. And so there's something about her prose which is easy, and it just renders you passive as a reader. It's like binging on Netflix. It's that kind of feel, which I suppose is how these kind of thrillers have to work. That makes me think of the business of people saying that they binge watch things on Netflix. They can watch one episode after another. And the way people talked about this when it first came up as a topic was as if it was a new thing. And I had to keep saying, that's reading. That's what people do when they read. One more chapter. Oh, I'll just stay up and watch another chapter. It's nothing new. The idea of being hooked on a story. And I was glad about that the streaming platforms had reinvented, I suppose, the love of reading that is so familiar to those of us who do read. Although I got fed up with Netflix and all of that stuff in the end, I'd much prefer to read. Okay, that's where I'm up to. I'm going to finish this, and then I'll be halfway through the month's books after just 7 days. It's only the 7th of January. I'm sure I will slow down when the weather eases up and I get to go out a bit more. Goodbye, everyone. I will talk to you again very soon. Do like and subscribe and all those things. I should say that underneath. Goodbye.